Hello, and welcome again to another edition of Leica Conversations. Antonio from Leica Camera here. We're so happy to have you for another edition of our great programming to bring you a little glimpse into the world of Leica and help motivate your photography. We've got another great, really special program here today with some special guests. So we're so happy you chose to join us today. We are joined by two gentlemen I am grateful to call colleagues in our great global Leica family. You may know them as a couple of our recent YouTube stars from our excellent Leica Talk video that kicked off the launch of our newest creation. Coming to us live from Wetzlar, Germany, is Marc Waelti, head of International Academy and Training, who's going to actually be our guest host here for the beginning portion of our program, and Peter Kruschewski, the product manager for Leica Compact and Instant cameras, including your beloved Q cameras out there, those fans of you here. Please give both of our guests a warm welcome to Leica Conversations. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Antonio, and thanks for having us, US. We're very happy to be here, and we are very humble, Peter and I, that we have been invited for such an important audience to the Leica Conversation. And we don't want to do a long small talk because we want to be right in time and go into the product. This is what it's all about today. And Peter, you're Mr. Q. We already know that. And let's rewind back to 2015 when we started with the idea, and tell me a little bit more about the idea and why did the Q become such a great success that we are happy about.
First of all, thanks, Marc, and thanks to everybody for having us here. Yeah, if you want to hear the complete story of the Q, Marc, you have to go even a little bit further back in time to 2013. And at that time, the market environment for digital compact cameras was changing dramatically. We faced the uprising smartphone threat on one hand, and on the other hand, we see and saw the drastic decline of compact cameras, and especially for those in the price entrance area with smaller sensors and low to mid speed lenses. And so Leica had to go a different way. We know that at that time directly, and we had to change our direction. We reflected, we focused on our strength at that time. And this is and was cameras with larger lenses and larger sensors, and as well as high performing lenses. And so the idea was born to develop a compact camera with a fixed lens, with a huge sensor in there, and as well with a high performing lens. And so the train started of the Q story.
And it was very revolutionary. I remember you told me once that a few people within Leica didn't believe that it's going to be a success, and it became a huge success, so big that about 18 months ago, we launched the next part of it, which was the new family member, was the Q2.
Exactly, Marc. This was quite a tough decision to take when we launched the Q2, because the project itself, when we started the Q2, just started quite long before even the Q1 was phased out. And at that time, the Q1 was performing very well, incredibly well in the market. And so it was quite tough to talk about the next generation and how to make that better, you know. And this was quite a tough number at that time, quite a task for us. What we did, we asked customers, Q users and no Q users, about their wishes for a next generation of the Q. And we gathered and collected lots of feedback and ideas and made priority lists and put, let's say, a list of top 10 features on the table, and just started to the development basically. And at the end of the day, in April 2019, we saw the result, the launch of the Q2. And it came with a dust and spray water sealing. It came with a new sensor with higher resolution. It came with a new EVF and even minimalistic design, amongst others. So we had a real evolution of the Q2 compared to the Q1.
So basically, a major step, and you all know out there the major step we had, the Q first generation, beautiful camera, and then a wonderful progress in the family. And therefore, we are super happy to have a new family member. However, before we go in there, I would like to go even a little bit further back, Peter, because it's a black and white camera, which some people could say this is a totally crazy idea. And in 2012, we launched the first M digital monochrome. That was crazy, was it?
Yeah, that's what people said. And they asked us, are you crazy just developing a camera with a sensor that is colorblind? How can you dare that? But well, somebody had to do at that time. And yeah, I mean, we did it. And Leica is the only one in the market actually that is able to develop a camera like that, an M monochrome or a Q2 monochrome that we have on the table today. And if you look back, for instance, on the black and white photography and look back more than 100 years to the first photograph taken by Oscar Barnack with the first Leica in 1913.
It's actually the picture we can see here. And this is in Wetzlar. It's only about 2 kilometers from us. And as soon as we can travel again, you actually can take the same picture. There's the Leica photos point, what we have today. You can take exactly the same picture. The house still looks the same. People are a little bit different dressed these days, but a beautiful spot to be there. And this is as well the legacy we have, right? It all started. We started with these photo cameras, and we feel responsible somehow as well.
Exactly. And at that time, and for a long time since then, the photography was exclusively black and white. And if you look back in the last, let's say, 10 decades, and you find lots of iconic black and white images that made history, right?
Look at this one.
Look at this, Muhammad Ali by Andreas Höpker, for instance. Thomas Höpker in 1966. And there are lots more in here, and every single black and white image made history here. So
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash, exactly, exactly. And yeah, and until today, you find those iconic images, and so black and white photography is still important. It's still popular for various photographic applications, and I would say this is as well a kind of artistic expression within this whole world of photography.
So we basically said we wanna move on with it, and it was a risk already then. And maybe you have heard when Ernst Leitz II. He said, when it was a decision, are we going to produce this camera from Oscar Barnack or not? When he basically said, I hereby decide, we take the risk. So, and this is something, if I invite you again to our hotel, just 100 meters here across it, where it actually says this on the wall at the reception. I think it was a really important part in history when we took the risk and we wanted to go the next step, basically do something crazy. And if you look at the picture here, where you can see we went from a M monochrome to different M monochromes over the years, and we have launched as well this year one in 2020, as you know. So, and then if we look at the Q2, and we wanted to bring the Q2 to this level as well, and hence the result of all of this is basically, ladies and gentlemen, you probably have seen it, the Leica Q2 Monochrom. It's an absolute beauty, and I think we have prepared the next slide with some technical data, but Peter, maybe a little bit something to the design, because I think it's a beauty.
It's exactly, it's one of my favorites to be open, because it's very minimalistic, very unobtrusive, with no Leica logo on the front, and yeah, it's a very nice design. So, and it's actually very well appreciated so far. It's quite young in the market, but we have got lots of good feedback so far.
And if you take it with you, nobody will almost realize that it's a Leica. They will just be looking at it because it's really beautiful. And let's talk a little bit more about the details, because Peter, you have worked literally 18 months on it. I mean, we know after the Q2, we knew that we want to take it to the next step, that we want to have a black and white Q2. We already had it in mind. So it was a fair bit of work to put all of this into the camera. Tell us a little bit more what has changed and what is the big news.
Exactly. So the core of the camera is, of course, the newly developed 47 megapixel sensor, which is based on the sensor of the Color Q. We use the same lens here, the 28mm f/1.7, which is working very fine and harmonizing very good with that sensor. But the big question that we had beforehand was, of course, is the lens up to the higher resolution of the sensor? And what I can tell you, yes, it's doing very good in a convincing way. Of course, we have, based on this new development here on the sensor, a really natural high sharpness and a very high level of clear details in the images of the camera. Coming with that, we have the extended ISO performance coming from 100 to 100,000 compared to the Q2 with the color sensor going up to 50,000 only. We kept the 3.68 megapixel OLED sensor, which works very good because the rendition for especially dark colors is very good here at that viewfinder. It's as fast and as precise as a system model with the color sensor. And of course, body and lens are both dust and spray waterproofed. So we have the elegant monochrome design on that. It's a little bit close to an M monochrome because we try to find a family here, a basis for a monochrome design for all of our cameras. And yes, of course, the Q2 Monochrom is made in Germany.
Yes, very, very important. It's the craftsmanship from here. And I can tell you to all of you, if you haven't had one in your hand, you absolutely need to enjoy that and look at it of how it's made with no red, just black and white. It's a beauty, and it's very comfortable to hold, and it's made to last. And it's the sensor inside, Peter. I wanna talk a little bit more about it because we did something special about it. It was very complex to do. We just didn't put a software in which takes the color away, right? What did we invest or what did we do to make such a detailed and a good sensor for this camera?
Of course, first of all, a monochrome sensor doesn't hold any color filter, the biofilter that we had skipped, of course. And on top of that, just to take get the maximum out of that sensor, the micro lens array had to be completely redesigned. Why that? Because it was to avoid or to get rid of any unpleasant reflections like ghost and flare, for instance. That took some time. And on the other hand, we know like the actual M10 monochrome performing very well on the market, and to get in those large footsteps was a kind of a challenge here as well.
Was a difficult one. And yes, it's my favorite question that I already asked you a few times. If I have a Q2, for example, or a color camera, I can take the colors away in post-production, all right? Do I really need a Q2 monochrome?
Yes, you do, because
you're the product manager.
Yeah, of course. On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, the look of a monochrome, of a pure monochrome image, is in terms of sharpness and of details really different. And of course, you can tweak your images afterwards in post, but you will not reproduce an image from a real monochrome sensor if you take it from a color sensor. So there's a real difference, even in the post-production.
What would you say, where do you see it best? Do you see it on a screen, or should people print it and, for example, compare? Where is it really visible for you?
If you ask me, I would print out as big and as huge as possible, and that's what we did. And then you really see the differences in sharpness and clear details. So yeah, but even on a quite good calibrated display, you will see the difference, of course.
So it's for both things, and then of course you can crop in and you see the beautifulness of it and how it works. And we always have pictures here with us, and we tend to compare them all the time and just to enjoy them. And I think this is something you only can see the beauty when you have it on a beautiful paper and put the frame around and hang them somewhere. That helps as well. I would like to talk about something else, Peter, that I was fascinated that I hear all the time again. I have seen it in forums before. Now, you and I are on YouTube with our video, and people post it again where they say it's a 28mm lens. Bring us a 35mm lens, and we are going to buy the camera. Or I have a 28 Q2, for example. If it would be a 35, I would buy it. Why do we not move away? If so many people ask for it, we know as well many people are happy with it, but so many people are asking for it. Why do we stick to the 28mm lens?
Yeah, because we have learned from the Q1 already that the balance between image quality, compactness, speed, and all over performance of the camera makes it necessary to use a 28mm lens. And since the first generation of the Q, we have learned as well that the Q family stands for 28mm. And coming with the Q2 and the high-res sensor of 47.3 megapixel, it even makes more sense. Because if you crop in to 35mm, that's the one you would love to, then you still have 30 megapixels in an image, and that means it's 25 to 30% more than even you have had at the Q1 at that time. So there's a real advantage with the new sensor, and so basically 35mm with 30 megapixel, it's more than enough resolution.
So basically, we shouldn't forget that we have this little black button right on your thumb if you hold it. And we will actually see in a few minutes, we will see a few pictures of it. So we believe in this lens, we believe in the resolution and the combination with the sensor. It's the perfect symbiose, basically.
Exactly, but yes, 28 is for that generation perfect. It does not mean that in the future we are looking for maybe different kind of lenses here, but actually we can say the Q2 stands for and the Q and the Q family itself stands for 28mm lens.
Yeah, so we have done a great job, and together with Peter Carby as well. There's a lot of development going into it to make this absolutely perfect. But of course, I can talk a lot about pictures. We should prove you, and we actually, or I always say, one picture says more than 1,000 words. And I'm very pleased to have a secret guest that we have in here as well. And you can see the picture already. It's my wonderful colleague, Janina Mock. And 2-3 words before I hand over to you, Janina. Janina is in our team of the Academy and of the training. Together with Oliver Fogler, we have 2 photographers in our team, and they're very privileged. Because they're privileged, they actually get the cameras way before you even know about that there is a new camera. And what they do is they can go out, take some time and take pictures. And the pictures they are taking is to prove the technical data. And this is why we call them sample images. We call them proof of performance, in order to translate the greatness of this camera and bring them to the limits. It's not going to take just a normal picture. We just want to really bring them to the limit. And this is Janina's job, and she will guide us through a few pictures Janina and Oli has taken over the last month. And Janina, hopefully the network connection at your end is good enough and we can hear you loud and clear. Over to you.
Thank you, Marc. Very warm welcome from my side. I'm not going to do a big small talk. Let's start right into the pictures. So I will explain through the pictures the benefits of the camera, starting by the first one. We talk a bit about the resolution. This is a Frankfurt train station. And as you can see, the picture is kind of noisy. So there are many people on there, the trains and everything. But if you look closer, there's a small detail to show off the resolution. It's a watch. Thank you, Antonio. A small watch in the background on the right side. And I think you're all able to read the time because it's 20 minutes before 10. And if you see the overall picture, like this one, you see how small the detail is in the whole picture, and you still got so many resolutions to read even the time. I read a double wow, totally right. Awesome resolution. Okay, next one, we also talk about the resolution. We'll get a nice new picture, in this case, Castle Neuschwanstein, which is in Bavaria. And the picture is taken from far away, but to see even better the castle, you can crop in with 100%, which is pretty close to the picture. And you will still see all the shingles of the roof of the building. It feels almost like you can grab them out because it's so sharp, and you have an overall awesome sharpness and resolution. If we go again back in the overview, you will see how small this part of the picture was, and you still see this awesome quality. Okay, let's go to the next picture, which is all about the ISO performance. So with Leica Q2 Monochrom, you can now go up to 100,000 of ISO. With the Q2 in color, up to 50,000. And I'm not sure if you see it in a good way in the PowerPoint, but the overall image noise, the image quality of the Q2 Monochrom is really outstanding. Even with a higher ISO, so one step higher, you see almost no noise with ISO 100,000, which was for me really unbelievable at the beginning before we did this comparison. I think this doesn't show that the Q2 in color is a bad camera, because it's really a nice camera, but it simply shows you how much you gain in quality if you leave out the color filter, for example. If you pay attention to the small details and the light and the dark part, so the quality on the right-hand side, the picture done with the Q2 Monochrom is way better. If you want to check this picture in DNG files, for example, and all the others as well, you can go on our website, and there is on the Q2 Monochrom side, there is a small part, it's called Technical Insights. There you can download all the pictures in DNG files just to show, to see for yourself how outstanding the quality of the Q2 Monochrom is. Okay, let's move on to the next picture. Thank you. Let's start talking about dynamic range. So dynamic range describes how many space, let's say like this, I have between all the highlights in the picture and the darker tones. Usually we show off a dark picture, let's say a sunset, where we have a dark area, a dark scene, and a very bright sunlight. But in this case, we decided to do also a bright picture just to show off how many differentiation like a Q2 can do, like a Q2 Monochrom, because you have really these small differences between the light gray and middle gray tones. Yeah. Let's move on to the next picture. Marc already told you about the crop function, which is built in the camera. So it's just one button you have to press to go from 28 millimeter to 35, 50, and 75 in JPEG. In DNG, the files will stay in 28 millimeters, but the crop will kind of remain if you work in some specific software. But what you see on the picture is even with 75 millimeter, you still have 7 megapixels, and which is the picture on the right-hand side. And you still can read, if you're able to speak Latin, then you may be able to read the sentence which is on the building, which I'm not able to do, but maybe some of you. So download the pictures and tell us what it's written on there. Okay, let's move on to the next picture. It's all about open aperture. So on many different brands, you have in open aperture pictures, fall off sharpness, especially in the corners. The picture doesn't look that sharp as if you go like Aperture 5.6 or something like this. But this is the proof how amazing the aperture is even open. So in this case, it's Aperture 2. And if you zoom in and do a crop, then it's so sharp that you can almost imagine what kind of people are living in these old houses. And it's, yeah, really sharp, and you see each car and you see people walking on there, and it's crisp and nice. And here again, the overall picture, just to see where is the crop coming from and how good the quality is in a 100% crop or even more. So go closer and see more is some kind of sentence we also always use when it comes up to resolution and topics like this. Okay, let's move on to the last, but definitely not the least picture. We will talk a bit about the bouquet, which describes how the not sharp parts are looking in the picture. What is special on this picture? For me, it's the transition, how soft it goes from the sharp point until the blur, but you still are able to recognize all the black keys. So it's not just one bunch of black, of a black box in the background. So you still see that there are more and more black keys or even the white ones. This is for me a proof how good the lens is and how nice the bouquet is looking. Okay, that's so far all from my side.
Thank you, Janina. Great job. And I'm sure that many people are jealous about your job, what you can do with going out of the house with these cameras. And yeah, we unmuted, or we actually have hidden our video, but you should have seen Peter. We have seen this picture so many times, and Peter looked at the screen and said, like, it's such an amazing camera. We always saw his goosebumps on the neck before. So that really shows how passionate Peter is and how people are about this camera. We really love it. And once you have it in your hand, you don't want to get it out of hand. And we have seen a few questions popping up here. And when somebody asks how big can we print this, Peter just says, like, just print it as big as your wall is, basically, right? It will be fine. You will be fine. Enjoy it and do it that big. So you can really do whatever you would like to do. Now, thank you very much, Janina, for your time. I know you're actually busy tonight and you just jumped in. I appreciate that very much. And then you all have sent us many questions, and Antonio will take care about them. And hence, I will hand over to you, Antonio and Peter, for the questions.
Thanks, Marc. And thank you, Janina. The photos are fantastic. It's so great to be guided through them a bit from some of the people that got to shoot them. Yeah, we got a bunch of questions, some ahead of time from our friends at LHSA, like Historical Society of America, the International Society. I know we've got some members here in the audience, so a special shout out to them. So we wanted to go through some questions, and then we'll go from there to the some live questions. I see people in the chat. There's a lot of chatter going on, so keep it going. Keep submitting your questions to the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can while we still have these guys' time. And also a big thank you. I think everyone can show their appreciation in the chat, maybe to Marc, Peter, and Nina, because the time zones, you know, they're coming to us in their evenings, you know, going into the office or coming to us from remote. So again, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for this. But Peter, I gotta grill you. I gotta give you some questions. So are you ready?
Barbecue start, right?
Yeah. All right. So here are some questions for you. How long has Leica been working on the Q2 Monochrome? And was it a direct result of customer feedback?
Yeah, it's now it took around 18 months until we had the new baby on the table after we launched the Q2 in April 2019. And no, it was not, I wouldn't say a direct result of the customer feedback, but of course it was on one hand a trigger to it. But on the other hand, after this great success of the Q1, we had the idea to enrich the Q family a little bit more. And at that time, the immediate idea came up to do a monochrome version because the Q2 already offers the perfect prerequisites for it. It's the high-res sensor, which is in favor of the image quality for a monochrome version, and as well the lens. And the lens itself was up to an even higher resolution than the 47.3 megapixels. So best prerequisites that you can have for a monochrome version.
Yeah, and and I'll ask a quick follow up of my own. I think people are so passionate about the Q since the first one. I know Peter, you and I have joked about how we've gotten requests and feedback of people want a Q for every want and need sometimes, and wish that we could meet all those needs, but it's a little bit of a limitation. But yeah, I think the Q from the Q2 to the Q2 monochrome, we're doing what we can, folks. But I think it just shows how people are so passionate about the camera that you've created. So next question, why does the Q2 monochrome not use the M10 monochrome sensor? We get that because people, often just assume like, well, can't you just move one to the other? Wouldn't that make it easier? Couldn't you come out with it faster, et cetera, et cetera? So why don't they share the same sensor?
Yeah, that's a good question. But what I can say is that a compact camera with a fixed lens has somehow different requirements in terms of the development of a new sensor in that case. And for instance, for the Q2 or for the Q2 monochrome, both are featuring a video. We need a really fast readout of the sensor. And so that's one reason why we had to take over and why we took over the 47 megapixel sensor, because it delivers everything that we need for a monochrome version of it. And furthermore, the sensor and the lens that we have in the Q2 color version already harmonized so well and so good. So it was no question for us then adapting this existing sensor for the Q2 to a monochrome version here.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think it's something everyone has to keep in mind. It's not only that when you have an open system, right, a system camera that can take all these lenses, but not only that, but our back catalog, right, of M lenses. I mean, I've put even screw mount lenses with an adapter onto the M10R, for example, or M10 monochrome, and you get a really cool vintage look. Well, you got to try and take all of that into account, right? But if you got a closed one sensor, one lens solution, it's kind of a whole different animal, right, Peter?
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right. So the next question we've got also from LHSA. Again, thank you. I kind of like this one. A little bit of makes you think. If you had to choose, would you place the Q2 monochrome in the Q family or the monochrome family?
Yeah,
that's a conceptual one.
Technically, I would say the Q2 monochrome belongs to the Q family. But if you come from the perspective of a customer, both cameras, the M and the Q2 monochrome, and the M monochrome, are both for those people who love black and white photography. But if you ask me personally, it of course belongs to the Q family. And I beg my pardon, Jesko von Oenhausen, who's the product manager for M, but it still belongs to Q. But at the end, it doesn't matter, because it's after all, it's a Leica camera, right?
Exactly. That's a good point. I love that. It's true. It's in the end, it's in the Leica family. It's great that the monochrome family now extends and grows, and it's not just the M monochromes, but the monochrome family, and they've adopted the Q. But I think there's a way they can all live in harmony. I kind of like that, though. It's just of an interesting thought process kind of image, kind of question. So here's get a little more technical. I know this can be a little bit subjective, but what do you consider the highest usable ISO on the Q2 monochrome? We get this question a lot for all of our cameras, but what about the Q2 monochrome?
Yeah, it's indeed a little bit subjective, but you can really go very high in ISO at the Q2 monochrome. And grab a camera and try, for instance, ISO 6400. You can barely see any noise here, but even at ISO 25,000, 50 or 100,000, you get still very good results. And especially under low light conditions, of course. But it doesn't mean that people use this high ISO regularly on a regular basis, but the opportunity to go so high gives you a great flexibility, especially in low light conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In my experience using the camera thus far, I mean, I always give the disclaimer that I'm okay with grain. I'm okay with noise. It's fine. To me, I used to shoot Ilford Delta 3200 film all the time. And, the original monochrome at ISO 10,000 reminded me of that. And as we continue with more monochrome cameras, and that when they're at their ceilings, it's like, that reminds me just Ilford Delta 3200, or better in a lot of ways. And it helps the scale fully. So You know, even at, like you said, ISO 6400 is quite clean. So it's, you know, very, very usable. Everyone has their thresholds. Mine personally, I don't know if I could weigh in here, Peter, I would say I have no problem going to 12,500. Beyond that, just a quick, you know, of course you lose a little bit of latitude, of course, when you get to those extreme ISOs. So you don't want to push those files quite so heavy. If I can give my own 2 cents here.
I agree.
So, all right. I've got another question. It's a little bit different one. You've worked with Leica for some time. You are responsible for a variety of cameras, not just the Q and not just the Q2 Monochrom. So of all the cameras you've worked on, is there an unexpected one maybe that holds a special place in your heart?
That's tough again, but I mean, I basically like this minimalistic and reduced designs of cameras. And I remember the QP that we launched a couple of years ago, which was matte lacquer, and this very unobtrusive design. I like that very much. And the same is for the Q2 Monochrom as well, with the skip Leica logo only in black ink engraving on top. I like things like that. But if we talk about a fan factor, there is something I would love to show you. It's Leica the Ford. So this baby I love as well very much, because since the launch of it, I took it everywhere, to every event, to every celebration, family party. And we took hundreds of images with that camera. And the day after this events, I always have a smile on my face when I see this unique and special images printed out afterwards. So the fun factor here is one of my favorites.
No, that's awesome. Well, you know, I know we're kind of like almost asking you to choose among your children, and there's nothing wrong. You pick the fun one, and the red one of course too, with that strap is quite striking. You picked the showy one, but that's okay. But very cool. Yeah, so far it's a fun little camera. Those instant film cameras can be quite a joy. You know, there's only so many things I think that put a smile on people's face or impress people when they're not photographers. You know, we get excited by, you know, oh, look at this, let's dive into 100% and let's be nerdy about corner sharpness and wide open performance and all those things. And then you show someone like an instant film print from a Sofort, you just hand it to them and they light up like nothing.
Exactly.
You know, I think when you show them the Q2 Monochrom print, then of course, different story, but you know, they're going to not just light up, they're going to be to the moon. But yeah, there's always charm to even the small formats. All right. We've got one more question actually. So Marc, you gave me this really fun question.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to go ahead and ask Peter this one.
Actually, it's not fun. It's
true.
not fun because it's never fun when something keeps you up at night. But this is a question I really like to ask people in different with different jobs, because I always think that's where the magic lies in a product. Because if you can solve a problem which happens with something and then you are specifically proud of it. So this is why I came up with it for you too, Peter, a while ago, and I said, what kept you up at night when you were developing the camera?
Openly, well, it's not.
You sleep well.
I sleep very well. So the company doesn't keep me awake in the night. The last sleepless night I had when my son was born. So this was a different story. But yes, indeed, we had, especially for the Q2, there were moments when we struggled a little bit. Especially when we talk about the sealing, for instance, the dust and spray water sealing, which gave us a little bit of a headache, because to do that at that time would mean that we had to make this camera and the dimensions of the body especially a little bit bigger. And this was something, there was not an option for us to do so. So the complete camera was turned inside out. We didn't know the outcome of that. But at the end of the day, our engineers did a great job here and just keep the exact design that we had at the Q1 on the body, even though there is a sealing in there now. So this was a great job done by our engineers here, I have to say.
Yeah, I imagine that must have been a little bit nerve-wracking, the thought of, you know, if it doesn't hold up, if it doesn't work, and someone takes it out into, you know, some rain or something, or, you know, the kind of places photographers are going to take a camera, you know, you got to know it's going to work. It's got to hold up. And it was so impressive too that the Q2, we got the weather sealing, we didn't grow the size, it maintained the same size and proportions, which was really impressive. And the Q2 Monochrom benefits from that as well. So that's our prepared questions. Now we've got obviously a bunch of people in this webinar hanging on you guys' every words. And I think we have a little bit of time left that we can do maybe a couple more questions from the live audience. So folks, get your questions in. If you got them, type those into the Q&A. I know my colleague Tom is in the chat with you guys as well. So I wanted to follow up on the question though, to start off. Someone asked about, and Marc, you addressed it, how big can you print? Firsthand experience, when we launched the Q2, we did a gallery show in New York, a pop-up, and we printed, I think it was, I can't recall if it was 6 feet wide or 7 feet wide, but somewhere in that range, huge print that took up an entire portion of an entire wall from the Q2. And of course, the Q2 Monochrome has even more sharpness and kind of more equivalent resolution. So yeah, I have to echo that in answering that question with that, just print as big as you want. And then it just comes down to the quality of the print that goes into it, not just the size. So Peter, I've got a question for you that comes into from our audience. There's a little more of a kind of a perspective and thought, thought one. Say they absolutely love and prefer black and white photography. They do, however, believe that some photos were meant to be in color. Do you ever get, in the US, sometimes we have this term FOMO, fear of missing out. So they're asking, for those of us who use a monochrome camera, or when you use the Q2 monochrome, do you ever have that moment where you wish you took it in color?
So far, no, not so far. Might be happen. But the other way around. When I had the Q2 with the color sensor, I sometimes wish to have a monochrome camera here to get the details and the sharpness even a little bit better. But no, for the Q2 monochrome, I can't confirm that so far.
And I maybe can jump in here and give a little anecdote. When we were preparing for the Leica talk, what we did together, when Peter came with his own pictures, and he said, I actually think I'm not going back to a color a camera. And I don't know if you remember that, but I didn't forget about it, because you were like, I think I don't want to shoot in color anymore. So I think it was...
Yeah, I had some very impressive moments with the Q2 right from the start. I have some images here from the cathedral in Cologne, and I went there, took some images, and cropped in afterwards in post, and I saw details and structures in the windows of the dome that I couldn't see with my bare eyes before. So this was really impressive and so overwhelming a little bit for me, to be open.
Yeah, I think that worry of any worry of FOMO whenever I get to use one of our monochrome cameras, it immediately goes away when I see the pictures and I see the quality of it in black and white. I think for me personally, I think it's more of the pressure from family members who are like, "Oh, do you have that in color?" Like, sorry, I don't, and no, I can't recreate it either. So sometimes maybe there's that kind of pressure to shoot color. So let's see, we've got maybe a few more questions. Let's go with
I don't know if I've seen it in the chat, sorry Antonio, but
yeah,
before please. That was Janina gave a good challenge when she said go and read the Latin words over the arch of this castle, and somebody already translated it. So obviously it's very easy to read, and somebody took this challenge on and gave already the answer here in English. So
all right, top marks to our chat for going the extra mile. Guys, I think that's a really unique proof of performance aspect that we have to examine that in the future for more talks and for more proof performance images and sample images. Can you read the text, and then can you, through Zoom, please translate it for us? We don't know. Peter, someone asked if you can discuss. We have some new color filters available coming along with the camera. Just broad strokes, like what are those for? What do they do? And why does somebody use a filter like that, like those color, like red or orange, yellow, green kind of filters?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the old school photography, right? If you take a orange filter on top of it, basically you get more drama in the sky, for instance, because the blue color is a little bit more dark. And if you take a green one, you will have the different shades of green if you take a landscape image, for instance. So it's a little bit old school photography, but it's quite nice to do so. You have a little bit different look of the images afterwards, right?
Yeah, definitely. It is definitely that old fashioned way of shooting. You know, I joke to myself that it's almost like I feel like I'm Ansel Adams when I'm using something like that. You know, with like maybe 1/1000th of the talent. But yeah, it's something cool and unique. And we've had them for the M lenses as well, and now the new ones, of course, are sized for the Q lens. How about maybe just another couple of questions, guys? I know it's getting late in Germany. And then we will wrap up very soon. I know you guys are hard workers. You've been all day long. We appreciate your time. Let's see what we've got here. Oops, sorry.
Maybe in between you're looking
please.
for one, Antonio. I would like to give an answer about the filters again as well. As Janina said, if you hop on the website and you go on the Q2 Monochrom under technical insights, we have as well sample images with the different filters. So you can actually see the difference, what happens to when should you use or when can you use these filters, how to use it, and then you can see a sample picture on it. So that might be helpful for this person who is watching us here to understand or to buy the right one for the kind of photography.
Yeah, great point. Okay, if we've got somebody here who asked about, they have an original Q, which of course is still a fine camera, and how would that compare, roughly speaking, you know, from 24 megapixels up to 47 megapixels? You know, if you do like a black and white conversion, what can they expect to see anew from say a Q2 file converted to black and white and then going all the way to the Q2 monochrome?
You talk about the Q1 compared to the Q2 Monochrome?
Yeah, jumping in that resolution and keeping going with what kind of performance can they, you know, just roughly speaking, what do they expect to see?
You will see much more sharpness in the image, visibly clearer and a higher level of details in there. And even though the Q1 with the 24 megapixels has really bigger pixels than the sensor of the Q2, but even the engine, which was developed newly again, just we moved on with that technology as well. And so the performance and the quality could even be improved compared to the Q1.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that big jump forward from the Q to the Q2, which I always remind people where we didn't really make compromises, right? We upped the resolution. We didn't make huge sacrifices to do that. We didn't slow the camera down. We didn't you know, make it no longer good in low light. It's still very versatile. And then the Q2 Monochrome just takes it even that further in black and white, of course. Okay. So one more comment here, and maybe this can relate. And Janina, if you're still with us, maybe you can give us a little bit of perspective. We had one question that's asking about post-processing. You know, maybe Janina, if you have a little perspective on what you like to do. I know post-processing is subjective. Maybe in your Lightroom processing of, I know our sample images usually are not pushed too far because we're trying to show what the camera can do, but a little bit of idea of what you like to do with monochrome files in the Q2 Monochrome.
So I personally use Lightroom for the moment, and honestly, you don't have to do much on the monochrome picture because they're coming really nice with high contrast and all the details, but still I would adjust a bit of the contrast and the clarity, which is a word especially in Lightroom. Yeah, these clarity is my favorite, just to bring it out even more crisp and even more detailed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it really draws out, you know, that bit of extra boosted contrast with a touch of sharpening. I think it seems to do. And yeah, I agree. I think that most monochrome files, the Q2 monochrome, the M10 monochrome, and really all of our monochrome cameras going back, they have a great look straight out of camera. And then, you know, you have that flexibility. If you like that, you know, punchy contrast, you can bring it in. If you like that a little more flatness, you've got some flexibility for sure. But I will mention, shout out to my colleague Phil, who's here in the chat. He said, you know, with the monochrome cameras, it's you spend more time shooting and less time editing, which is is true, I think, in most cases. You just do a couple of small tweaks if you want them, and you're done. Again, thank you everyone for your questions. Thanks to our guests, especially. This has been such a special program, and we're so happy to have the Q2 Monochrome now part of the family. We're of course happy to continue bringing you guys more Leica conversations and more of these kinds of programs. Be sure to stay in touch. Be sure to check out our main site, us.leica-camera.com, for more info about the Q2 Monochrome. As Yanina mentioned, and Marc mentioned, the Technical Insights tab, which is new under each camera. You can see those proof performance images if you want to tinker with them yourself. Download them full res and see it firsthand on your own screen. And of course, leicacamera.usa.com for purchases, as well as your local stores and dealers, etc. And yeah, let us know what you thought about the program. Share your feedback. Reach out to us. What else you'd like to see from Leica Camera USA, especially when we get to bring in special guests from across the ocean. So, everyone, thank you so much, Peter, Marc, Yanina. I cannot thank you enough for doing this with us, and thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Really, really appreciate it. And until next time, see you again on Leica Conversations.